All righty, good evening. This is the October 17th, 2024 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The time is 6 o'clock. We will begin our work session momentarily, and then we'll convene into general session at 6:30.
Is it going to be remote too?
Freddie, you've changed.
I know I have.
And look, Annie, are you going to pull up Freddie on Zoom?
Okay.
You want to start, or you want to wait?
Good morning, man.
Okay. Howdy, how are you? Good, howdy. I'll just wait for the thumbs up.
He's working on getting it connected.
Oh, okay. We're just waiting on Freddie. Get him all situated.
Recording in progress.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, I see.
These are council members.
I see Freddie out there, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Item 2 on the agenda is our work session. I'll start with the roll call of the commission. Please indicate your presence. I'm
Recording in
Kevin Haas,
progress.
Chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Commission members, Vice Chairman Glenn Portman,
Present.
Ken Hafman,
Present.
Cindy Bishop,
Here.
Ed Marr,
Here.
Freddie Guerra, virtually.
Present.
There we are. Okay. And tonight, Sue Blankenship's going to be absent tonight. So, first order of business is to introduce staff. Mary, if you'll introduce the staff, and then I guess
Yes, sir.
review the cases.
So myself, Mary from Boswell, Senior Planner. We've got Matt Steer, Development Services Administrator. Aaron Tainter, Assistant Director of Public Works. Cole Baker, EIT Graduate Engineer. Desiree Woolman, Code Compliance Officer. P.D. Stell, Deputy City Secretary. And Ms. Cammie McGee, Board Secretary. Alright, so we're going to look at the agenda items. Did you want to go first, Matt? To do the...
No.
Okay. All right, so we have several items on the agenda tonight. First hearing that we're gonna talk about is item 6, which is a short-term rental over on Turnberry Lane, which is in Coppell Greens. This particular residence, they've had an STR since about 2022. They have not renewed. So, we did the changes back in 2023 where now you have to get the zoning first and then get the registration. So they've had an STR before. We sent out letters, either they didn't see it or whatever. So they're coming now in order to get the zoning for it. They did have it on Airbnb or VRBO somewhere. We contacted them and said, hey, you need to get the zoning first, so please take down your listing. So they did that back in June.
How long have they had the previous STR?
Since 2022.
Okay.
Yeah. So this one is a little bit different than some of the other cases. So it's one room out of the house. This particular unit has almost like a mother-in-law suite where it's attached to the house, like by the roof line, but it's detached from the rest of the house. So they would have access to the bedroom, which has a bathroom as well. They wouldn't have access to the other parts of the house, but they would have access to like the patio area. We received a few phone calls from the neighborhood, so I'm not sure who's gonna show up tonight. Basically concerns about traffic and not knowing who's going through the neighborhood, etc. The second item or public hearing on your agenda is Victory Shops. So we're seeing that one again, this time around. So what they're proposing is a slight change up. Still a combination of restaurant retail. They're going from 10 lots to 11 lots. The other big change is that they're actually proposing a hotel with this concept plan. So the hotel is Hotel Tempo by Hilton brand. It'll be a 5-story, 140-room hotel located in Lot 8, which is kind of like in the back corner, adjacent to the Spring Hill Suites on Hackberry. So some of the buildings have gotten larger towards the front because they have more restaurant users. So it went from like 10,000 to like 12 or 16,000 square feet. They have enough parking overall. I think 1 or 2 lots may have to do a shared parking agreement just because of the way the lot lines kind of fall. But essentially, all restaurant retail, all the restaurants with the drive-through at the front. We have already approved a salad and go for lot 5 in this shopping center. Those are kind of like the highlights for that, for this case. The next case would be on Freeport. So just north of the Rolling Oak Cemetery, where currently Alfred Media exists. So there's a house that fronts on Freeport, and then there's Alfred Media. So those 2 lots they're looking to purchase. They'll scrape it, like the house and the existing building that's on there. And we're gonna build like about 186,000 square foot office warehouse building. With this particular case, there's an existing tree easement that runs from the north to the east side of the property. So it's like 80 feet in the north, 50 feet on the east side. It does front, or it does abut residential to the north and the east. Other things that we have to look at though is that there's a floodplain in that area. So there are a few PD conditions that they're asking for. One is to not put up a screening wall. We're okay with that because A, they've got 80 feet of trees and 50 feet of trees. As well, you don't want a screening wall in the middle of a floodway. The other thing is they're requesting to go from, typically if you're within 150 feet of residential, you're limited to 35 feet in height. What they're asking for is to go up to, I believe it's 43 feet. So when you look at the plans, it's actually like 39 at the back, and then it ramps up to 43 towards the front or the south end of the lot. When we look at this property, you'll see they've provided some site views. So even from the residences to the east and from the north, with all the trees and everything, that height, you won't be able to really see the building, even with that height. The houses to the north, it's about 520 feet from the building to the first house to the north. To the east, it's probably about, I think, over 200 feet. And within that, there's probably, like I said, 80 feet just on their property, and then probably another 100 feet of trees on the north side. And then on the east, there's 50 feet plus another probably 50, 80 feet of trees before you get to a house. So, the third PD condition on that one is something that council will have to look at. It's to not have to do a cloner. So the it's really not for you guys to look at. It's just gonna be one of the PD conditions that council will have to look at.
What is staff's position on Clomer?
Yeah, we're good with it, because FEMA doesn't require it? Yeah. So, in terms of the PD conditions, staff is in favor of those PD conditions. It's my understanding that the applicants have spoken with the HOAs to both the north and the east side of the residential properties. We did receive some letters from some of the residents, because they're talking about noise, traffic, wildlife, the impact that this may have on that. It'll have like 55 truck docks. It's a spec building. It's going to be anywhere from 1 to 3, 4 tenants. I don't think they have anyone lined up currently. Last time we spoke to them. They're trying to keep as much of the trees as they can, but obviously they're taking out a bunch of trees where the footprint is and where the parking is. But they're also planting somewhere around 90 to 100 trees on site, trying to fill in the gaps where there are gaps. Yeah. And then the last item would be the plat that goes with, it's a companion item to the Freeport agenda item. Basically taking the Alfred Media plat and replatting it with the other LI portion that they're purchasing and creating one lot. Getting rid of some existing easements, creating new easements like fire lanes, etc. Do you guys have any questions on any of those items?
So on the last one here,
Yeah.
is it the same intensity of use as the other side? The previous case, behind the home? Or is it more intense, density-wise?
In terms of, for the Freeport?
Yes, that's the last one here. Yeah, the Freeport Parkway one.
So my understanding is that it's not like tractor trailers coming in, it's more of smaller trucks. And I believe they did do some kind of traffic call. It was a small trip generation, is my understanding.
But we don't know the kind of uses that'll go in there.
Not yet,
Okay.
but this is what they anticipate.
And hours of operation, is there?
I'm unaware of any restrictions on the hours of operation, but it's something that you could definitely look at because there is some residential adjacency.
Is the site designed for 18-wheelers then, and dock high?
Mhm. Is it dock high doors?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Mayor, why did, in terms of the zoning from light industrial to special, why did they need a special use permit to move?
So that was for the existing one, for Alfred Media, because that site had a house on it first, and then they came and built the office warehouse. They didn't want to tear down the house, so they used it as a conference center and for lodging for their people.
Okay.
That's why it had an SUP on it. But when this comes, if this is approved,
yeah.
it'll basically be, like the house on it will be demolished, the office warehouse will be demolished, and they'll build this
Okay.
bigger building.
Got it.
And we've switched over to a PD, essentially.
Yeah. And then on the short-term rental,
Yeah.
it was a little unclear, but is there any belief that there's any sort of compliance issue in terms of similar to what we've seen operating without a permit, and then the city staff finds that they're not, and then they receive a permit. But is there any concern with them operating in the past without a permit or operating outside of the bounds of the current ordinance?
Right.
And
So-
any concern that they would potentially in the future?
No, because, the whole idea is that we did contact them, and so now they're coming to get into compliance. The first time, I think when they first bought the house, I don't think they understood that they needed a permit. We told them, they came into compliance with, we got the permit. We changed the ordinance. I don't know if they either didn't know, didn't understand, didn't get the letter, whatever. So when we saw it again, now that we've changed the requirements, we said, hey, you need to come get this. So we have spoken to them.
Yeah,
So now they're coming back to come do that.
right.
Thank you.
But a permit had always been required, like from the 2022 to 2023.
And they had a permit. They got their
Okay.
permit, yeah. And so we went, Desiree went and did an inspection prior to this meeting to make sure that, do they have everything else that has to get approved when they get the registration anyway. So they were, they had to add some smoke detectors and then get their fire extinguishers updated, which they've since done.
Right, okay, okay.
Have we had any police reports on the prior usage?
No. I checked. Anybody else? Otherwise, Matt's gonna do his items.
Mary, do you know how often they're paying their taxes? I assume they're hot tax.
Yeah, it's up to date.
Do we know what the intensity of that use is? That might be relevant for them. I mean, they're running it 100 nights a year, 10 nights a year, 20. You can tell from the hot tax, but I don't know if you did that analysis. Because
I just
intensity of
looked
use
to
is always
see
an issue.
if they were paid.
Okay. If
So-
you don't know, that's fine.
Yeah,
You could always just ask the applicant.
Yeah.
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 Is there controversy by your neighborhood regarding this application?
The sign went up, I got phone calls saying, hey, what's going on? And I emailed one of the members of the HOA board, told them what was going on, and saw some conversations back and forth. So, I think there was some of them that were probably against it, had concerns about traffic and parking on the street. Just when you have an STR, there's, people that aren't from that neighborhood all the time that are coming there. So we got about 4 or 5 responses on that one. I think Matt has some ordinance changes.
Is there a limit on the number of people that can stay in that one bedroom at a time?
Yeah, so it's like I think it's like a queen bed or something, so it'll be like 2 people.
In theory, but there's
Yeah.
no.
Well, they
legal
live
restriction.
there, right? So-
Right.
There's
They
a
don't-
legal restriction. You can only have so many people under the building code
Mhm.
stay in a bedroom.
Okay.
So there's that. Now, if they rent it and 8 people show up and they cram them in there, there may not be any way we would know about it unless there's a complaint
Right. Okay.
or if we had other information. We have eyes and ears software, so we can see kind of what the activity is
Yeah.
and what they're renting it out and how they're marketing it.
Right, that's a good point.
So I don't know that we have any information to indicate to us that someone's abusing their privilege.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, next items are the proposed ordinance amendments. What I'm going to do is I'll present these together, and then we'll hold one public hearing for all 4 of the cases. The first one relates to the dock areas within a light industrial building, allowing for that to be converted to regular parking when there's a change in tenant use or change in tenant or use of the current tenant, provided they screen the dock area from view. They can either screen it with a wall or with evergreen landscaping. The next of the amendments is related to the parking required for a warehouse use. So right now our ordinance says 1 parking space per 1,000 square feet and no less than 1 per occupant on the maximum working shift. So we're proposing to go to 1 per 2,000 square feet, decrease our minimum parking required, but leave in the 1 per employee on the maximum working shift. That seems to be industry standard when we talk to the industrial users at our roundtable. The third is retail parking. It's related to the parking associated with retail centers that are 10,000 square feet or greater in size. And this allows for the Director of Community Development to allow a 5% reduction in parking, which equates to 2.5 parking spaces for a 10,000 square foot center. And then it allows for her to grant an even greater than 5% reduction, provided they submit a parking study or an analysis that's prepared by a licensed transportation engineer. And the final one is related to the legal non-conforming signs on Beltline and Denton Tap and throughout the city. There's a couple of shopping centers that you can see on my slides that demonstrate that there are legal non-conforming signs that aren't really that attractive. So during our retail roundtable, it was discussed that if, say, they were allowed to replace them to the current configuration, that they could upgrade them to be architecturally compliant. So we're proposing to amend our ordinance to allow for that change in updating their signage, basically. And so, any questions related to those code amendments?
What was the impetus of these changes?
Okay, so we had a retail roundtable in fiscal year '23, and then we had an industrial 2.0 roundtable in this around the same time, and just talking with the users and trying to be more flexible, allowing for changes to go through administratively rather than have to come through a lengthy process. That was really the impetus.
And the industrial site going from 1 to 1,000, 1 to 2,000, did you check other peer cities on what the rates are?
We did. They ranged from 1 per 1,000 to 1 per 2,000. But we did check with the experts in the industry.
Good. Okay.
So some of the changes for industrial are adversely driven by the automation of a lot of the warehousing. They have less employees.
I can see that.
Less parking. And then for retail and the parking, that model, the business model of delivery now is part of the industry standards for retail, so that cause those to go down.
Absolutely.
So, Matt, I have a couple questions. One, I think, in terms of like the retail roundtable, I think it's always a good thing when you have a roundtable like that, and it shows you're listening and trying to adopt some of these. So,
Absolutely. So we've got actually one of the members for the Victory Group. He was in the roundtable for the retail. So
cool. So a couple questions. So in terms of, is distribution defined anywhere by itself, or it's always combined with warehouse / distribution?
Yeah, I just found it in there. It was defined as warehouse / distribution, so that's why we changed the term just flat out warehouse.
Okay. But distribution wasn't defined.
I don't believe so. I think it's defined as warehouse / distribution.
Okay.
And that's why we made the change, was to be.
So what will the distribution say? Is that 1 to 1,000?
Yeah, it's just changing the terminology within the parking requirements to call it warehouse / distribution.
No, so I think distribution would be 2,000. Still would be changing to 2,000.
Yeah. Warehouse / distribution is one term.
Because it's not defined.
Yeah, and it's actually defined as warehouse / distribution.
When they're really two different things.
They're defined together, though.
I know they are. For us, it's probably not, but they are technically different.
Yeah.
That's part of that whole argument with 3.334.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Okay, so then the second question.
place of business.
So in terms of the parking spaces, so granting the 5% reduction, so number 6, that makes sense. Number 7, so that
Allowing,
so it allows for more than 5% if a number of things happen. So this one I have a little bit of concern over, because it does, there's a few different things that have to happen or could happen, and it doesn't really define kind of the parameters of how much it can be, or, you know, exactly the
Well,
type of parking study and so forth,
So, yeah, what that is it will allow for the Director of Community Development, if they have a parking study that says this is all that's needed, and a professional transportation engineer prepares that study,
yeah.
then we would go off of their findings.
You would consider it.
Yeah, she doesn't have to approve it.
Okay, so I guess I understand that, so I guess my concern is then, you know, procedurally, I mean, should the granting the 5% over, but over that with additional studies, I mean, why wouldn't that just come back through planning and zoning?
It would if say she was uncomfortable with granting the variance.
Okay. Which, I mean, generally speaking, I'm in favor of, you know, the more administrative actions. Right. However, this one does concern me a bit because it allows for, there's just more variance of things that could be administratively approved that should have come through planning and zoning.
Maybe a suggestion is put a cap on it if it goes over 5%, but less than 10% or something like that. With the study, if it's over 10, it has to come to you.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I like that.
If that would make you guys feel more comfortable.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that was the
so it's just not
impetus.
carte blanche.
Yeah, I like that also, because then we're saying over 10,000, because it could be any number. You know, there's no limit on the square footage of it, so this would kind of cap that from the percentage side. Okay.
And I think too, it may, you know, I didn't do all the kind of math in my head, but if all the existing properties, if all of a sudden everyone says, okay, now I want to reduce, then it could be an onslaught of parking studies and, you know, coming into one person to try to make the
It's a
call.
good idea, but part of what drives this is, in my experience, where they get caught, and you get caught a lot of times, where the change in use, you know, the retail, now I got 2 restaurants in there, and you eat up all the parking. And then, you know, you have the karate studio, and they're only busy when the restaurants aren't busy. It's that kind of thing to help them lease the space. That's what's driving.
It's kind of a shared parking kind of thing.
Yes, it is.
Between
And so
retail
that's what's driving it.
differences.
But I think if you did a cap or a range, you know, if we had an outlier that wanted a huge change, it'd probably be worthwhile to lease them through and have.
Yeah, and I think, and I, you know, like I mentioned, I'm in big favor of doing more things, you know, administratively, you know, kind of within reason, and then 2, you know, full confidence that she can make those decisions with the right information. But I think it's always helpful to have a bit of a top-end guardrail. So one for, you know, it doesn't cause kind of an onslaught, and it does, you know, provide
Keep them
a,
from over asking, because they'd rather deal with her than us.
Right, yeah, absolutely. So 5 to 10%. You know, if everyone's comfortable with that, I don't know if I could include that as my recommendation out there.
Yeah, they'd say that they would approve it with a cap, 10%.
Okay.
And then when we take it forward, we'll just make
Right.
that comment. They want to add it on, the council can add it.
but in general, I mean, I think it's I'm in favor of that. I think it's the right thing to do, to look at and to be able to make those changes from a parking standpoint, when either, you know, the changes of use or just when you're over parked, because I think it is about adapting with kind of the, you know, what's happening.
Yeah, and what we find is this is the last user of the center, right? It's
It's
vacant,
always the last.
and
Yeah.
then they kick the can down the road, and now this sucker at the end is like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't go in there, you know, I can't open my restaurant anymore.
I like the cap because down the road here, 5 years, if there's a change in parking dynamics also, we can also revisit it. Now we have at least a cap.
Yep, that's good.
The other thing I have is, when she approves it, will engineering be reviewing the traffic study? Or is it?
Yeah, we'll have an
Staff,
internal
okay.
DRC
Okay.
review.
And then the last question in terms of the non-conforming signs, what was the genesis of 1990?
It was a study where, I looked at all the shopping centers and then saw that the non-conforming signs that were really non-conforming were built prior to 1990. So
Got it.
That's when we changed the ordinance.
Was that the old world?
Yep, Gary got here.
Got it.
Okay.
All right. Great.
Hey, Matt, I did have one question regarding the retail establishments, and I guess signage too, because, you notice throughout the city that there's stores and retail establishments that have these temporary signs that say, parking only for my business. And when is that going to be addressed?
So that's currently not in our ordinance, so we don't address it. So if someone calls up and asks the question, we say, technically, you're not allowed to do that. So, but it's really a private enforcement within the shopping center.
It's part of the lease.
Yeah.
It's part of the lease, Freddie, that whatever, the landlord a lot of times will say, well, I'll let you reserve these 3 spaces, and then it's in their lease. And so it's a matter of the private landlord addressing that with his tenants.
So, in other words, you have the Eagle out there towing cars, like down over in Dallas off of
Well,
75 Knox Henderson.
And there is some law on that that's not very favorable for the landlord about notice, and you have to have a 24-hour. Yeah, there's all kinds of restrictions for a landlord to do it. It has to be posted, it has to be a 24-hour towing so you can get your car back if you're one of those poor suckers that park.
I think what Freddie's, or Commissioner Guerra's referring to is, just this is reserved for Hollywood Feed or whatever, UPS, those sort of little signs that are out there.
Right.
And so technically you can't tow based on those little signs.
No, you cannot. In case anyone's watching this at home, park wherever you want.
I was on the losing end of that one time, so that's why I asked.
It's a bummer.
Any other questions on code amendments? All right, we also have on the agenda discussion about the work session we're coming up regarding smart cities and the future-oriented approach to residential developments.
Right, yeah, so we have a meeting scheduled for next Thursday, 6 o'clock, is it?
Yes.
6 o'clock, and it'll be at,
I have it.
6 o'clock, where's it at? At Life Safety Park. And so anyway, we've got an agenda prepared. First time we're going to talk about is the 2040 vision and our role in that vision. Basically, this Ford and Smart Cities are going to give a summary of what they're doing on their work plans as it relates to the 2040 vision. We're more of a, take it as it comes sort of committee. So, we can talk about senior housing, how we've had those come through, and other things that we've done associated with the 2040 vision. And then the second item on the agenda is a fiscal impact analysis that we're going out RFP. We're putting an RFP on. Mindy's going to talk a little bit about that. And then the third item is the comprehensive master plan update. And so our committee is going to be highly involved in that, and we want to encourage the Smart City Board and Ford Task Force to include a member on our steering committee, maybe their chairman, and then the vice chair as a backup, in case their chairman can't attend, to go through this process with us. And then the fourth item on the agenda is communication between the boards and establishing maybe an annual meeting that we sit down and talk through items with each of the boards. That concludes my update.
Cool. Any questions about our meeting next Thursday? Commissioner Guerra, any questions on that? Okay. All right. The time is 6:34. We'll take a 5-minute break and then we'll adjourn into general session. Okay, with that, we'll close the work session.
6:45. Prior to coming out before you, we met in pre-session to review the cases. The applicant for item number 6 is on the way, not here yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to move on to another item, then we'll come back. But our first order of business is citizens' appearance. We have several folks on an item not on the agenda tonight. Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to item 5, which is the approval of the meeting minutes from our September 19th meeting. Is there any discussion by the commission or a motion by the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that the minutes of the meeting of the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on September 19, 2024 be approved as written.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Chair Portman. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Hafman. Cammie, would you call the roll, please? Sorry.
You're fine. Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Guerra?
Aye.
Vice Chair Portman?
Aye.
Commissioner Haas?
Aye.
Commissioner Mauer?
Aye.
Commissioner Hafman?
Aye.
And Commissioner Bishop?
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Okay, so taking out of order item 7, this is a public hearing to consider approval of PD-301R5-HC Victory Shops, Coppell, a zoning change request from Plan Development number 301, revision number 3, Highway Commercial, to Plan Development 301, revision number 5, Highway Commercial, to revise the concept plan for the overall development of the site and allow for the combination of retail, restaurant, with and without drive-throughs, and a hotel on 11 lots totaling approximately 16.77 acres of property, which incorporates a detailed site plan to allow 16,510 square feet of multi-tenant building with restaurant and retail uses with a drive-through on Lot 3, Block A, on approximately 2.17 acres, a detailed site plan for 16,780 square feet multi-tenant building with restaurant and retail uses on Lot 4, Block A, approximately 2.24 acres of land, and a detailed site plan for 9,095 square feet with restaurant and retail uses with a drive-through on Lot 2, Block A, on approximately 1.70 acres, and a detailed site plan for a 79,202 square feet 5-story hotel on Lot A, Block A, on approximately 2.96 acres of land located on the southeast quadrant of South Beltline Road and Dividend Drive at the request of Victory Retail Coppell, and being represented by Kirkman Engineering. We have a staff presentation by Miss Mary Perone Boswell. Mary?
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. Item number 7 is for Victory Shops Coppell. So again, this 16.77 acre tract stretches along the east side of Beltline Road from Dividend Drive to Hackberry Road. Tonight, we are here to revise the concept plan for the overall development of the site to allow for a combination of retail, restaurant, with and without drive-throughs, and a hotel on 11 lots totaling 16.77 acres. We're also looking at a detailed site plan to allow for a 16,510-foot multi-tenant building with restaurant and retail uses and a drive-through on Lot 3, Block A. A detailed site plan for a 16,780 square foot multi-tenant building with restaurant and retail uses on Lot 4, Block A. A detailed site plan for a 9,095 square foot building with restaurant and retail uses with a drive-through on Lot 2, Block A. And the most dramatic change is a detailed site plan for a 79,202 square foot 5-story hotel on Lot 8, Block A. Again, the linear park is still proposed to be constructed with Phase 1. So in this image here, we're looking at the different phases and what's going to be constructed when. So the dark gray is the infrastructure, which should begin construction fairly shortly. The items in purple, which kind of look like light blue on the screen, for lots 2, 3, and 4, and 8 will be part of Phase 1 and have the detailed site plan that we're looking for this evening. Also, Lot 5, which is on the far right lower quadrant, already has a detailed approved site plan for a salad and go. Then the items in pink will be constructed with separate phases and will require separate detailed site plans when they come through. So access is still the same as previously conceptually approved, with 2 driveway entrances proposed for this site. We have the ones along, one on Dividend Drive, one on Hackberry, and then the 3 along Beltline Road. Sorry, the 2 along Dividend. So now we're going to take a look at the different detailed site plans. So this one is for Lot 2, which fronts on Beltline. It's proposed to be a combination of restaurant and retail. The landscaping for the site hasn't changed significantly, so modifications mostly have occurred due to property line changes. The landscape buffer along South Beltline Road will still range from 30 to 60 feet in depth and 30 along Dividend and Hackberry. Overstory trees will be placed in the landscape buffer with a variety of shrubs and plants and ground cover. The linear park will also be constructed with Phase 1, and part of that linear park is located on Lot 2. So one of the PD conditions that we will require is that the details of the focal point area require staff approval and shall be in place prior to the CO of the buildings at the rear of the property. So with this particular lot, the building increased in size from 3,800 square feet to 9,095 square feet. In terms of building elevations, the materials and the general elevations for this building have not been altered significantly, other than obviously to make it a bigger building. Otherwise, it's fairly similar to what was previously approved for this lot. And the materials that you see on the bottom are the ones that will be used throughout the development. So each building will share common characteristics and common building materials. The next detailed site plan that we were looking at is for Lot 3, which again is a retail restaurant. This was previously approved as a 12,510 square foot building, and now they're proposing it to be 16,510 square feet based on the tenants that they're looking at going into this space. I believe they have more retail or restaurant tenants lined up for this space.
Mary, I'm sorry, what was the previous square footage?
Previously, it was 12,510.
Okay.
And again, the elevations, like I said, pretty much similar. They share the same material board. The images pretty much look the same, just expanding that frontage to accommodate the larger square footage. Lot 4. So Lot 3 would be on the north side of the main entrance. Lot 4 would be on the south side of the main entrance along Beltline Road. So again, you have that 30 to 60 foot landscape buffer along Beltline Road. You've got the landscaping and part of the linear park also in Lot 4. This particular one does not have a drive-through. Previously, this was 10,990 square feet, and now it's proposed to be 16,780 square feet. Again, same thing, common material board, similar elevations, just expanding to accommodate the larger square footage. So this is Lot 8, which is located to the rear of the property, the back upper right corner, backs up to the Spring Hill Suites that's under construction currently. So Lot 8 was previously a 33,000 square foot office space. Now they've proposed a hotel by Hilton, Tempo. It's going to be a 5-story, 140 bedroom or room facility with limited service restaurant, a meeting area, pool, fitness room, outdoor plaza area for guests. And this particular lot runs along the back and then down the side, so it has the south end of the main entrance there. So you can see by the landscaping that follows kind of the lot line. And this is the first floor plan for the hotel. The main entrance to the left, you'll have some lounge areas, lobby, an outdoor patio area to the top left, the pool area. Then you can see the fitness room just south of the pool, bar area, and then some of the rooms will commence on the first floor. This next image that we're looking at is essentially the remaining floors, so the second to the fifth floor will be all the different rooms types. And then with the hotel, it'll share the same brick colors. They've also added a rosemary green color stucco to the hotel face. The combination allows both a tie to the rest of the center, but also gives the hotel the ability to brand itself. The hotel also has a design area element in gray with white lights that represents the street patterns in Coppell. So you can see in the bottom left with the upper image how that kind of matches. So for us, with the lights, it's considered signage. So they are requesting to be allowed to have this lit street pattern along with the signage for the hotel. Although the sign for the hotel is shown on the elevation, there's no dimensions or information provided. So staff would require that the name of the hotel meet ordinance requirements and that the street pattern sign, which we would consider to also act as an art piece, be allowed. And that kind of fulfills part of the focal point that we're looking along for HC districts. And that would fulfill part of that requirement. This next image basically shows you the different elevations of the building. Again, you've got the Tempo Hotel with some of that gray and green. So this is a zone change request. We did mail out notices, 5 within the 200 feet, additional 4 courtesy notices within the 800 feet, and we received no responses. So staff is recommending approval of the request subject to the same previous conditions and adding conditions J, K, and L. So I'm just going to go through them with you. 1, that there may be additional comments during the detail engineering review. 2, that a final plat will be required prior to permitting for each of the detailed plans. 3, the TIA will need to be updated to reflect the proposed building expansions. 4, a right turn lane be constructed on South Beltline Road with this project. 5, revise the landscape plans and calculations to reflect changes prior to City Council. 6, PD conditions. A, that all signage shall comply with city regulations unless specifically requested and granted. So that would include the art sign on the Temple Hotel that they're asking for. B, that plans for the linear park shall require staff approval. C, that the focal point artwork shall require staff approval and shall be in place prior to the issuance of a CO for the buildings at the rear of the property, which includes the hotel. The PD conditions continued here. So D, a POA shall be required prior to the filing of the final plat. E, a detailed site plan shall be required for each of the development, for the development of any of the lots. F, a tree survey and tree mitigation, if any, shall be required at the time of detailed planned development. G, parking shall be allowed in the front yard as shown. H, restaurants with drive-through shall be allowed as shown on the concept plan. I, to allow the monument signs as previously approved. J, so this is the new one, to allow the art lighting component for the Tempo Hotel. K, and this is also new, to allow patios under 500 square feet per lot to not have additional parking, have an additional parking requirement. Essentially, if you have a 500 square foot patio, especially with all the restaurants, you would not have to provide additional parking. Anything over 500, you would have to provide additional parking. And L, to approve the setbacks as shown. And that is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, and the applicant is here as well.
Okay, very good, Mary, thank you. You'd mentioned that there was a cursory assessment of traffic. The net increase is part of this application. The applicants may have that information. I know they're going to do TIA
Right.
after submittal, but has there been any kind of cursory assessment of what the change in site looks like?
Yeah, Cole,
Okay.
is it Cole or John? You want to answer that?
We can talk on that here in a second.
Yeah.
We can talk. Okay, that was the only comment I had, or
Okay.
question I had of staff. Any questions of staff by the commission? Go ahead, Ed.
Yes, Mary, a couple questions on the condition regarding the drive-throughs. Restaurants with drive-throughs shall be allowed as shown on the concept plan. Is that, just to confirm, that indicates those are the only lots that will allow drive-throughs?
Correct, unless they come back through and request something else.
Okay.
And that was previously granted.
Okay.
So the majority of this was already granted. The only new ones were J, K, and L.
Okay. And then why do some of the drive-throughs show a drive-through stack with cars and some do not?
I think it's just how they drew them.
Just how they draw it.
Nothing. I guess one restaurant's more popular than the other.
And then the last question, as it relates to I think the building or hotel that's under construction that's outside of this property that's contiguous to it, will this property have, it looks like cross-access to that property, but only from, it looks like only from Hackberry, correct? Or from that portion of the site plan, the southern portion?
Correct. So I think there will be like a sidewalk connection, like along the rear of some of those lots that are on Belline. But actual driveway connection is just the one on Hackberry.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff by the commission? I failed to mention, for the benefit of the public, one of our commission members is virtual, Commissioner Guerra, so he may have questions throughout the process. So, okay, is the applicant here to present the case? If I could get your name and address for the record.
John Gardner with Kirkman Engineering, 5200 State Highway 121, Colleyville, Texas.
So we had a staff presentation prepared. Is there anything that you'd like to add to the application? Anything from your perspective?
Mary covered just about everything.
Okay.
Here to answer any questions. And the developer of the hotel representative is also here.
Okay. So one of my questions was regarding net increase in traffic and potential impact. Has there been any kind of cursory assessment on that at this time?
So we haven't done the TIE study yet, but I will say, so the intensity of the uses on the back half of the property decreased to increase the higher intensity on the front part of the property. So as far as traffic goes, the only thing that we've done a study on is the overall parking, but that's how we've obtained and been able to balance that.
Okay.
Is decreasing the intensities on the back side, increasing the intensities on the front side.
Okay, I did a back of the napkin number crunch, and I calculate about 120 some odd additional PM peak hour trips. But I'll let Cole and team review that when you all submit. So I'm thinking there's going to be a little more trip generation, more assignment. I do see the decel lanes on northbound Beltline, so I'm fairly comfortable, but just in case, I want to make sure there's no negative impact onto the adjacent street traffic. Okay. Ed, did you have a question, applicant? I kind of have one, but it's more of a refresher question. The access to the linear park from the hotel. So it looks like it's only from that one location? On
Yes,
the
sir.
kind of the far east side, or I guess maybe near the front drive of the hotel?
Right, there's a 10-foot crosswalk there
Right
to the
here.
linear park.
Okay.
You see that?
Out of curiosity, why only there? Why not on the west side or the north side of the site, of the hotel site? I mean, we're accessing a linear park. I mean,
Right.
we're showing it here. If you're in the hotel and you want to go to some of those other uses, you got to go down, up, over, and kind of zigzag in and out through, versus cutting across the parking lot and you're on the other side of the.
Well, the linear park is this here.
Right, but that access point
So you
to
come
the hotel.
right here.
Right, we can shift it further north towards closer to the entrance. We don't want to get too close to that intersection.
Got it. Okay. Okay, now I recall it now. Okay, I'm good. Okay. Any questions of the applicant by the commission? I see Ed.
Yes, so Lot 10, Block A, well, it's just Lot 10, is that an indication of a double drive-through, or is that just showing the flow of traffic?
It's a single drive-through with just two lanes, so a drive-through lane and then an escape lane if needed.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I was just curious because since you're showing the drive-through wrap all the way around the building.
Right.
Versus just showing where the stack would start.
Right.
Versus all the way around. Okay.
And it's one-way traffic behind those two buildings, so that's why we provided the second lane just for traffic flow.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the genesis of the question was, well, one, if there was a double drive-through, and then two, because you're starting the drive-through at the entrance. So is the intention that the entire lane is a drive-through, so your stack would hold 20 cars?
It could hold up to that many, but as far as the required stacking, it would extend just behind the building, the 6 stack.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Guerra, any questions from the virtual world?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Mary, can you refresh my memory? Was there not another hotel site on the far east, right off of Hackberry?
Right, so across, Spring Hill, like.
Kind of where the legend is.
Where the legend is, yeah. There is
Okay,
a
that's
hotel.
what I thought.
Mhm.
Okay.
That one's under construction.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anybody who would like to speak for or against the proposed application? I don't see anybody who signed up for it, but certainly open to anyone who'd like to provide any thoughts or input. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any discussion by the commission? Is there a motion by the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve PD-301R5-HC, Victory Shops Coppell, a zoning change request from PD 301R3HC, Plan Development 301 Revision 3 Highway Commercial, to PD 301R5-C, Plan Development 301 Revision 5 Highway Commercial, as described in item 7 of the sheet delivered to the commission.
Okay, we have a motion by.
Subject to staff conditions.
Subject to staff conditions. We have a motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Marr. Cammie, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Guerra?
Aye.
Vice Chair Portman?
Aye.
Chairman Haas?
Aye.
Commissioner Mauer?
Aye.
Commissioner Haveman?
Aye.
Commissioner Bishop?
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Is the applicant here on item 6? Okay. We'll go back to item 6 on the agenda. This is to consider approval of PD-134R4-SF-7, that being 134 Turnberry Lane, a short-term rental. Zoning change request from PD-134R-SF7, a zoning change request from Plan Development number 134 revised, single family 7, to Plan Development 134 revision number 4, single family 7, to consider allowing a short-term rental for one room on 0.17 acres of property located at 134 Turnberry Lane at the request of Aditi Carell, the property owner. We have a staff presentation by Ms. Mary Perone Boswell. Mary?
So on May 30th, 2023, the City Council approved an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 12, Article 30, for short-term special use permit required for lodging houses, which includes short-term rentals. Short-term rentals are required to have a special use permit in addition to registering with the city in order to legally operate in the city of Coppell. This particular home has a guest room that is separate from the rest of the house. You can see outlined in the yellow circle. Typically, a special use permit is required for a short-term rental because this lot is currently part of a existing planned development or PD district. An amendment to the PD is more appropriate and essentially accomplishes the same results as an SUP. So the applicant has owned the home since 2021 and has a homestead exemption. The applicant is wanting to rent out one of the bedrooms. The residence is located at the northeast corner of Turnberry Lane and Kilbridge Lane. The single-family home has a two-car garage that fronts the street since there is no alley. There are additional 2 spaces on the driveway for guest vehicles to park. Since this is a corner lot, there's also additional parking on the street along the side of the house. As I mentioned, this particular home has a guest room that is separated from the rest of the house, but it's covered under the same roof line. So it has its own entrance and is the room that is being proposed to be rented out for the STR. It's located at the front of the property, and it has an attached bathroom as well as the bedroom. So the room would have a bedroom with a TV and Wi-Fi. Guests would have access only to the room, its attached bathroom and courtyard area, and not the rest of the house. There is no place to cook, refrigerate, or heat up food. There are no signs on the building indicating that it is an STR. So here on the screen you can see the rest of the house, the guest quarters in the circle there, and then you can see some images of the actual unit. And then this is the patio area that they would also have access to. So the home received a permit for an STR in 2022 after staff found it online without a permit. They had purchased the house in 2021. It was used for short-term rental and the license expired in early 2023. Staff had reached out to all STR owners of the new approval process and the expiration dates. We did find the home advertised online for rent in July of this year, but it was since removed after we spoke to the applicant, reminding them that they needed to go through this process. Their hot taxes are currently up to date. They were reminded once to pay for their hot taxes. We did speak with Ms. Coppell. She has indicated that she does live there. Code compliance did a check on the house and noted that the fire extinguishers needed to be updated, and there was some smoke detectors that were missing. Since that inspection from code compliance, those items have been taken care of. Staff did contact the police department. There have been no police calls to this house since this applicant has owned this residence. In terms of, it's required for the SUP or the PD change. Since it is a zoning change, we did mail out notices, 23 within 200 feet, an additional 116 courtesy notices within 800 feet. We did receive about 7 calls, most of them asking what was going on and wanting more information. 2 that were opposed. And just before we walked in here, I saw that I had an email from, I believe, someone on the HOA saying that they were also opposed to this. But I believe they were having a representative attend the meeting. So staff is recommending approval of this request, subject to the following conditions. 1, to obtain an annual STR permit. 2, to notify staff of any changes of property ownership. And 3, to limit the rental to the 1 room specified for less than 30 days. That is the end of my presentation. I believe the applicant is also here if you have any questions.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mary. Quick question on item 1, to obtain an annual STR permit. So if this thing gets thumbs up tonight, they have to come back to the city and apply again
Correct.
for the permit?
So previously, you would have to get an STR permit. So it was just, if you met all the boxes, we did the inspection and you got the permit, which is an annual permit that has an annual permit. In order to make this STR process a little bit more transparent, we adopted the SUP process. So not only would you have to get the zoning, which, informed your neighbors of, hey, this person is looking to do an STR. If they got that zoning, then on top of that, you would have to get the annual permit to go with it. So this is the first step.
Okay, but the annual permit doesn't require to come through the planning and zoning, okay.
No.
And as part of that review, is there internal criteria of how have operations been, complaints from neighbors? What does that look like on the annual permit?
Right. So we do keep track of if there's any complaints based, because there is the chance that it could be revoked, as we've seen in other cases where we've revoked permits. So we do keep track of that. And we also have a third party who tracks all the different STRs in the city as well.
Okay. Are there any other STRs in this neighborhood?
No. We had the one that came through that was denied on Laird earlier this year. We have, I think we have some long-term rentals, but this is the only other STR that I'm aware of.
Okay. Any questions of staff by the commission? Okay. Freddie, do you have any questions of staff?
Do not.
Okay. Is the applicant here to present the case? Hi, how are you? If we could get your name and address for the record.
Yes, hi. My name is Aditi Corral, and the property address is 134 Turnberry Lane, Coppell, Texas.
You can pull that down if it's...
Okay.
Just, the whole thing. There
Yeah.
you go. Okay. And question regarding the number of times you've had it rented, say, previously rented since you're coming through for new, how many, out of the year, the number of times you rented out?
Yes, it's a short-term rental. We don't do it more than 30 days in a row. So I don't remember the exact number, but we get it 3 to 4 bookings in a week for a day or two. So maybe in a year, I would say 4 times 2 in a month, 8, like around 70, 80 times in a month, in a year.
In a year, okay, okay. And you all started the STR in roughly 2022?
Yes.
And have you ever had any issues with any of your?
Never.
Okay.
Never, because the guests are limited to the property. They can just access their room and the courtyard. They do not have access to the main house, and they have a designated parking spot. So no issues. It was going well.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant by the commission?
I do have one. I guess in regards to your neighbor that's adjacent to you, any complaints from him or her?
We have never ever got any complaints till date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question. Just looking at the layout of the home. I've never seen a layout like that before.
Yeah.
So was it designed initially as?
No, we bought this property back in 2021, and we had been doing the STR at different cities previously. So we picked this property for this one of the reason was this as well, because this layout is something where we can do like short-term rental, looking at that one room. So we did not do any changes. It was that way since we bought the property back in 21.
Interesting. I've not seen a layout like that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. We reserve the right to maybe bring you back for any questions following the public hearing.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have several folks that have signed up to speak in opposition. I'll run down the list here. You have 3 minutes to speak on the item. Cammie has the official clock. She'll let you know when you have 1 minute left. We only have 3 signed up, but if there's others who'd like to speak on it, we can take those after. But why don't we start with Charles Poole? Charles, and then followed by Carter Smith.
My name is Charles Poole. I reside at 848 Mulroney Drive in Coppell Greens. Most of my neighbors, in fact, all of my neighbors that have conferred with me on this are opposed to this. This trend is something that they're adamantly against. We are fighting both in our neighborhoods and in our society to make sure that single-dwelling homes stay just that. Now, I have no complaints against the neighbor who's trying to do this or continue doing this, but their short-term gain certainly cannot be weighed against the expense against the neighborhood. Whereas they may be limited to the house and they may be limited to a parking spot on the floor, on the drive, it does not limit their access to the neighborhood. So naturally, the people that I know, my neighbors who look out for me, I look out for them. They know when I come, when I go. I look out their house when they're gone out of town. They look after mine. We know each other's pets, in fact. But to introduce the unknown, that is exactly what it is, the unknown. The parents of the children on my block are they're concerned to the point of detriment to their health about the neighborhood, the flow of traffic, the people coming and going. How many times have we accessed our own cameras on our doorbells to see who, what, and where was in our front yard? I hate to say we're living in a moment of fear, but it goes that way eventually. And we want to protect our neighborhood because it is a neighborhood. So I urgently ask, and I do say prayerfully, that you consider denying this for the purposes that I've stated. I release my time to the next speaker. Thank you.
Quick question for
Yes.
you, sir. Were you aware that it was an STR in 2002?
I have been told, yes.
Have you ever, from your perspective, seen any issues?
My involvement had to do with a house that was on adjacent to our street, and that there were quite a few things going on in the middle of the night down there that made us concerned, and I became very involved with that one. As to this one, no, I have no recorded issues at this time.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Carter Smith, and then to be followed by Oswaldo, I'm sorry, Aralawa. Okay, he'll be next. Okay.
He can tell you when he comes up, because I know the man, but I can't say his last name either. I've lived in the neighborhood since 18. really awesome neighborhood. Know the majority of the entire neighborhood. Been on the HOA a couple of times, and it is one of those things to where we know the vehicles that are coming in. There's two ways in on Turnberry or Falkirk. And I do pay attention to the number of cars that are there. There's not been any issue, but I do pay attention to the different vehicles that are located at this particular property. And like I said, it's a single family zoned area as far as there's a broad cross-section of young people with young kids and old codgers like me. And it's a really awesome little neighborhood. And I just want to see it stay that way. The situation with Laird was very different. It was easy. We had 30 people show up. But there is the concern that's been shared with Charlie and myself that there is opposition. I wish more would have shown up. It's just a concern for where the neighborhood might be going. Are we going to start running businesses out of our homes? You know, they're just those kind of concerns. Where does it, if we start, where does it stop? So those are my concerns.
Okay. Thank you very much. Oswaldo? Oreyawa? I don't know if I got that right.
Osvaldo Orellana.
Orellana.
152 Falkirk Drive.
Thank you.
I am against this zoning changing because guests might not be familiar with the community rules and regulation, which can lead to a lack of accountability. It can put more strain on community resources like water, electricity, and waste management. This type of rental can cause traffic and parking issues. Also, it opens the door for more short rental that can increase the risk of crime and suspicious activity. Homeowners regularly conduct background checks on rentals. Short-term rental can affect the sense of community and interaction when people are constantly coming and going. Certainly, the property value in our community will be jeopardized. I feel safe and comfortable in Coppell Green, so I wouldn't like when this changes. Yeah, I request you deny when this zone changing. That's all.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I have
sir.
a question.
Yes, sir. Oswaldo?
Yes. Thank you, Oswaldo. I appreciate your comments, sir. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your comments. I would ask you and the rest of your colleagues who are opposing this zoning change, are there other rentals in your neighborhood that are in existence? Maybe they're long-term rentals? Yeah. And are you...
No. I'm aware that there is a long-term rental in Coppell Green, no short rental. I wouldn't like when this be changed because
So
it's a
there's no other
risk
short-term
for
rentals?
our community.
I'm sorry, sir. Yes, there's no other short-term rentals in your community, but there are other long-term rentals, you're saying?
In the next neighborhood over.
In the next neighborhood or in your neighborhood?
I'm not aware of that.
I'm aware of two long-term rentals running around me on
Okay. If I could, let me redirect to staff. Are we aware of officially in Coppell on long-term rentals?
There's some long-term rentals. I know of one, but this is the only short-term rental. The other one that was applied for was denied on Laird.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on the item? If we could get your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Jim Prince. It's 139 Falkirk.
Yes, sir.
And I'm also opposed to it. There's several reasons. One is that corner, that particular corner, is one of the busiest corners in the neighborhood. And the streets are narrow in our neighborhood. If somebody parks on the streets, 2 cars barely can get by. If they park on the street, was it Turnberry, I believe, that goes north and south? I don't, at that corner, people come around that corner and that car sitting there, it can be a disaster. So if you approve it and if they have parking, we're suggesting that the tenant has to park on the street, on the driveway and not in the street. But furthermore, we do have several long-term leases, and I'm real lucky I've got one right across the street with the people that broker cars. And guess how many cars are parked on my street legally, because they're a long-term lease. They got 2 cars in the garage, 2 cars in the driveway, and 3 cars on the street, typically. And that's right across the street from where I live, and it's right down the street from Oswald. So the neighborhood, the streets are narrow, the traffic is always a mess anyways, but that particular corner is the worst in the neighborhood because on Falkirk, as you go out, exit, there's speed bumps by the pond. So everybody goes down that street because there's no speed bumps, particularly me. And just for the owners, that house is not unique in the neighborhood. There are several of them built.
I saw one 2 doors down. Looked like the footprint similar.
There's 2 builders, Lennar and some other guy, and he built a lot of those houses. So, but that's my site.
Okay.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak for or against the proposed application? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. I would like the applicant to come down. I have a couple of follow-on questions. While you're on the way down, Mary, what is the requirement on parking for short-term rentals? Is it driveway only, street allowance? Is it a condition that we can consider as part of this application?
You know, we would prefer that they park on the driveway. However, street parking is allowed by anyone.
Okay. When you came up earlier and spoke regarding the case, you mentioned, I asked you how long you've had this short-term rental, when it was previously, you told the number of days, and then you mentioned something about other properties. So well, first of all, do you live at this property?
Yes.
So okay.
Yes, this is the only property I own at this time.
So where were the other properties?
It was in a different city. It was in Frisco.
But y'all own it?
Yes, it was long time back. I mean, when we used to live there, after we moved to this area, we rented that, and then we used to do STR on our rented property with the approval of owner and the city.
You've since sold that property?
No, we rented that property.
Oh, you're renting it?
No, we rented that when we were living there, but
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad. Okay. I wanted to ensure that you live at this property. And what about allowance for parking on the driveway?
So we just own one car. We just have one car. Me and my husband, we own one car, and we park it inside the garage. For the guest, they have a designated parking space, which is our driveway. We do not let them park in the street. We have on our the STR advertisement, we put it there that they need to park it on the right side of our driveway. So 99% of the time, they park it in the driveway. If they sometimes park in the street, we let them know to just move it to the driveway, do not park it in the street. But we never had an issue with parking, like, up until now.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant? Ken?
Yes, thank you for addressing those questions. What would you say to these colleagues, your neighbors, as far as their complaints and concerns regarding safety in the neighborhood and additional STRs that might be approved if we approve yours tonight and so on?
Yeah, of course. So the STR, the advertisement I personally do, I do it in Airbnb. And I do selective guest approval. I do not approve all the guests. Their identification is verified through the app. And I see the reviews. If they have like low ratings, I do not accept them. All my guests get into my property only with the acceptance. I do not accept all the bookings that I receive. So if considering the safety issue, I don't think it will be an issue because first thing, identification is verified through the app. I speak with the guest before we approve him or her to the property, and then we speak about the things that the regulations. We have everything listed that on the ad, but on the top of that, I tell them the additional rules that I have for my property and for my location. So we do lots of, I don't know if I can show you the conversation I have with my guests before I approve them, but it's a very long conversation that I make with them before I actually bring it to the location. So I believe there should not be a safety issue, and there has not been a safety issue because the guest comes after lots of consideration. I do not accept everyone to come to the location. So it's, verified people only with good reviews. If they have just maybe 1 4-star, I don't accept them. I accept all the guests with 5 stars reviews. So maybe that's one of the reasons I never had an issue. And then also to add on this, I only accept one guest. Like I don't accept couples. It's just one guest with no kids and no pets. Just single person for a night or two. They just come there because we are very close to the airport. They just come there to sleep and they just go in the morning. Most of them do that. So that's. I don't think safety should be an issue. And the other issue my neighbors raised about the parking, as I mentioned earlier, I have a designated parking space for the guest, so they will not be disturbing the traffic there at the street because they will be parking at the driveway. So that should not be a concern again. So yeah.
So what is your reaction if we added another condition as a requirement that it's parking on the driveway only?
Absolutely, I can take that. Yeah.
You mentioned that you vet your customers. Has staff been privy to some of your line of questioning to staff? You said you had a long list of questions you
yes,
shared. Have they been privy to that?
I don't know if they are, no, but I can share that. I have it on I use this app called Airbnb. So I have restrictions, like I have rules and regulations that they need to follow before they send me a request. And even after they send me a request for a night or two, they go through questions with me, and then only I approve it. And because Airbnb also allows you to just do the instant booking. My booking doesn't let the guests to do the instant booking. So they need to go through the process to do the reservation. And I don't accept long-term reservation. I mean, most of my guests up until now, they have been to my property for a night or two. They are here for like some kind of seminars because the Grapevine is close by. They just come for the seminars, or they come because the airport is nearby just to sleep before they take their flight. So up until now, I've been blessed with like good guests, no problem, no issues with the communication, no issues with the parking spot, and yeah.
And how long have you lived at this residence?
We moved here on September 7th of 21.
Of 21. And are you active in your homeowners association group?
Yes. Yeah, I read all the messages that's come through. I try to attend the meetings that they invite me to. Yeah, I try to get involved as much as I can.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other questions by the commission? Ken?
Yes, just in terms of security and such, are you say you live there in the home, is that
yes.
correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you mind asking who else lives there with you?
It's me and my husband. And we have a security camera all over the house. We have, I think, 8, 9, 10 cameras outdoor. We have the cameras inside the house, so it's fully secured. We have the ADTs, not ADT, I don't remember the security company name on top of my head, but we have a proper good security system in the house. There are cameras. We monitor the guests through the cameras. We have mentioned that on our listing that they get monitored all the time whenever they are in the property or even like we have the cameras facing towards the street, so they get monitored whenever they are coming to to the driveway as well. So they are monitored 24/7 when they are there.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have a question of staff.
You bet.
Are there any rules that we've kind of set up as standards for how many STRs we would permit within a neighborhood?
No. The whole point of having the SUP process is that, we notify the neighborhoods, and that gives them the opportunity to come out and speak on that item.
So all STRs have to come through our planning process before they're approved? Okay. And would it be appropriate to consider the kind of density that we might think would be appropriate for STRs within a neighborhood?
At this time, that's what the zoning is for, is to have the process. Previously, if you just met the requirements, checked off all the boxes, you could have an STR. And there was no notification of the neighbors till after the application was already approved. And then they would find out, oh, there's an STR. This allows, just like anybody else, to zone a piece of property. They get notified, and they have an opportunity to come to these meetings and speak on the item.
I'm sorry. Mary, let's just hypothetically here, if this application went down south tonight, it was opposed or denied, could they come back and apply again, or for an STR?
Yes, but if it was denied tonight, they could still appeal it to City Council because it's it's a zoning case.
Hypothetically,
Yeah.
and let's say they go to council, it gets denied,
Mhm.
and they decide some time later they want to try again. They're not precluded from applying again.
Correct.
If there's a desire to do that.
Yes.
Okay. Freddie, any questions?
You have a question for the applicant. I guess my question is, what's your typical interaction with the renter when he or she is there?
So we like to give them some privacy. We only get involved if they have questions or we have concerns. So we do it through the app. We do not, there are so many times I haven't even seen my tenants, like the guest, I would say. For many times I haven't seen them coming in or going out because, and the other thing is I work completely remote. I'm home all the time. So I do the surveillance myself as well, not only with the security camera, but with myself as well. So I'm home like 24/7, I would say. So yeah, the interaction would be whenever it's needed. It's not, I don't go and hang out with them or something, but I just try to answer their questions whenever they have, or just let them know my concerns if I have again.
Thank you.
Hopefully you're not feeling offended by these questions.
Yeah, sure.
We're thinking about the neighborhood,
Uh-huh,
and so
yeah,
we're
of
just
course.
trying to vet the process. Is this home your first home?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so prior to here, you didn't own a home, nor did you rent out rooms as a rental or anything?
I did not own a property, but I rented a whole house. So
You rented the house. Did you have short-term rental
Yes.
as part of the rented house?
Yes.
So you've always done that?
For some time, yes.
Okay. Have you ever encountered
Never
any-
ever.
Never ever.
Never ever. And previously, I used to do it. As I mentioned earlier, I did it in city of Frisco. I did it there for like almost 3 years, I would say, or 3+ years. Never ever I had an issue. That was a big house too. It was a 5-bedroom house, and again, it was just me and my husband. The other reason we do this is, it's a quite good side hustle. That is the number one reason. The other reason, it's just two of us, and this property is a 5-bedroom house. It's pretty big for us. So we just want to rent out a space which we are not using and just help people. We do not rent it for like high amount or something. We just try to do it reasonable, in a reasonable rate, and help people, and just because we don't need that room. We don't need that space. We are not using it, and we don't, it's just two of us there. So yeah, it's not a lot of people in the house. No pets, no kids.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant by the commission? Okay, thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. Any discussion by the commission?
Yes, for the fellow commissioners. I think hearing the community in terms of the perspective on short-term rentals, I think is really important in terms to inform, how we think about these and what we do. I think the challenge with this is the way the ordinance is written. This particular short-term rental is designed basically to comply with the ordinance and how it's written, whereby unlike other short-term rentals in other communities, you're renting out one room and you have someone living there or a property manager or it's your primary residence and you're renting out a room, and it's really designed in that nature, and this one fits into the design of the ordinance. So not to downplay the concern with short-term rentals in terms of in the community, but I think this does fall into how the ordinance is written. And then as a reference from a parking standpoint, I would not be in favor of adding an additional condition as it relates to requiring the parking to be in the driveway for a number of reasons. One of which is how to monitor, how to enforce that, and then ultimately if the renter parks their vehicle on the street, and they would be within their right to park on the street, how would you enforce towing their vehicle? Or it would just be too difficult to enforce. And I want to just mention that from to my fellow commissioners from if anyone's thinking about adding a condition, to make sure they had that perspective.
Okay, great point. I quite honestly, I'm on the fence on this one. We've had a handful now, 4 or 5, and I think there was one other one where it was a single room that was approved. The others, I think, have been kind of hit and miss. But other than the concern that we're hearing from residents, the neighbors, that there are issues with a longer-term rental. Not to say that there would be with yours, but the potential compounding of this and the desire of the neighborhood to stay as a true single-family neighborhood. I know I've gone the other way in favor in the past, and I don't know why I'm on the fence, but I'm not fully to the point where I could vote approval from my perspective, out of concern for long-term effect of the neighborhood and the integrity of the neighborhood. No offense to you all, so that's why I was asking those kinds of questions. You're a new resident, as opposed to a resident that's been there a long time, and now you want to, side hustle, whatever the word was, you have the extra space. But it's a new resident bringing in a new concept, concerned by the neighbors. Other new residents are going to come in, immediately going to start doing the same thing, and so that's why I'm not fully on board on this one. That's the way I feel on this one. That's all.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, so I take comfort from the fact that any STR that comes that wants to be added to that neighborhood would have to come through this body here. And I'm very sensitive to the concern of the neighbors that for expanded growth of the STRs within their neighborhood. I'm not opposed to this. She's met all of the criteria that we have asked. And also, I haven't heard one neighbor complain about how the occupant has managed their STR. They seem to be in good standing with the neighborhood with respect to how they're maintaining their property and how they're regulating the STR renters that come in. So I'm not concerned about that because we do have the ability to decline or deny any future STRs within that neighborhood. I think the idea of how many STRs are permitted within a neighborhood might want to be considered at some point by the commission with respect to some kind of guideline that would, give us a framework on how to approach and think through STRs and the density of STRs within a neighborhood. Because who wants STRs everywhere? I don't think any neighborhood wants STRs everywhere. I'm pretty sure. So, but an STR here and there for people who are responsible and who meet all the criteria, I'm not opposed to, as long as it's managed well and that the neighbor, the owner of the STR is considerate of the traffic impact and the upkeep of their property. And as far as I can tell, there are no complaints about that with this ownership. So I'm in favor of this particular application, but would look very closely at any future STRs within the neighborhood if they were to be applied for.
Any other discussion by the commission?
I was gonna mention one thing. I'm on the fence on this also. I guess my concern is this room is isolated. There's no access to other common areas within the house, and the vested interest in the homeowner. She spoke about cameras, and again, my concern is just this is a room that's just set aside. It's just one bedroom. That's my concern. Is just I think there should be more interaction and have that greater vested interest in exactly what the renter's doing. So that's my concern.
Okay. Cindy.
Thank you. Yeah, this case reminds me, I think it was the first STR we had last year, which was a woman that was renting a one bedroom, and she was like a super host or something on Airbnb. And I find these cases very similar. She apparently fully vetted her tenants, residents, whatever, and it was, for 1 or 2 days, they were also here on business, going to the airport, and there weren't any complaints. So I'm probably going to be in favor of this issue.
I remember that case. Okay. Any other comments or discussion? Ed?
Yeah, one last comment. So I think in hearing the other commissioners, and to reiterate, I think the challenge is that our question today is not whether or not we allow short-term rentals. We do. There's a path, and it's written in the ordinance. And so I think whether or not we philosophically agree with that or not, there is a path, and if someone meets the guidelines of the ordinance, and in this case, this is a house that's almost specifically designed to kind of meet the ordinance. I mean, we're reviewing this particular case today, and not the broader concept of allowing short-term rentals. And so I think, and the reason I mention that is I appreciate the community input and the perspective, and want to let everyone that knows that comes out that we are not making a judgment on short-term rentals, broadly speaking. We're just looking at the case at hand. I do think it's important to note that my fellow commissioner mentioned that this does give us the ability to monitor how many of these are in a neighborhood and the density of it, and then also how things are managed as well. So it does give us the ability to ensure that everyone has quiet enjoyment of their property. And so I think that was just important to reiterate.
Okay. Any final discussion? Excellent points by the commission. Okay. Any final discussion? Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve PD 134R4, single family 7, 134 Turnberry Lane, short-term rental, zoning change request, plan development 134 revised, single family 7 to plan development 134 revision, single family 7 to consider allowing short-term rental on the property noted subject to staff conditions.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Marr. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second, Commissioner Hafman. Cammie, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Guerra?
Nay.
Vice Chair Portman?
Aye.
Chairman Haas?
Nay.
Commissioner Mauer?
Aye.
Commissioner Hafman?
Aye.
And Commissioner Bishop?
Aye.
4 in favor and 2 opposed, motion carries.
Okay, very good discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you to those that have come out to express your thoughts on the proposed application there. Item 8 on the agenda is a public hearing. This is to consider approval of PD-318-LI, that being 300 Freeport Parkway redevelopment, Lot 1, Block A, a zoning change request from light industrial to special use permit 1132, a zoning change request from light industrial and special use permit 1132 to plan development 318 light industrial to allow a detailed site plan for one office/warehouse building, that being 186,143 square feet, and associated easements and fire lane configuration on 13.05 acres of property located on the east side of Freeport Parkway and approximately 2,300 feet south of Sandy Lake Road, being developed by Alliance Industrial Company and being represented by Langen Engineering and Environmental Services. We have a staff presentation by Ms. Mary Perone Boswell. Mary.
That would help if I turn the mic on. So this site consists of 2 properties located on the east side of Freeport Parkway, approximately 2,300 feet south of Sandy Lake Road, which are proposed to be replatted into one lot. So with this image, underneath you can see the existing building of Alfred Media, and then there's a little lodging house just to the right of it, over here, and then there's an existing house over here. So both sites are proposed to be redeveloped with a larger office warehouse building, which is overlaid on top of it. The proposed building is approximately 186,143 square feet and will be situated east to west on the site. The southern end will be the front facade, with the northern end containing the truck court area, and will have 55 overhead doors. The site will provide 233 car parking spaces along the east, west, and southern sides of the property. The building is a spec building with the ability to house 1 to several businesses. To the south is the city's Rolling Oak Cemetery, which ranges 4 to 8 feet higher than this site. So one of the PD conditions is to allow for a living screen in lieu of a masonry screening wall, being requested along the northern and eastern property lines where it abuts residential. Along the majority of the northern property line exists an 80-foot deep tree preservation easement that's outlined in the green on your screen. So this extends to the eastern boundary where it becomes 50 feet deep tree preservation. A dense tree line acts as a natural living screen from the residential, and that's another reason why we would be in favor of no masonry screening wall. Along the southern property line, the tree line with the retaining wall and the site being lower would also screen the cemetery property. Another PD condition that is being requested is to the City of Coppell's Clomer higher Clomer application requirement. This request is not the purview of the Planning and Zoning Commission, but of the City Council. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, does not require a Clomer for the kind of work that this project proposes. The applicant has prepared a downstream assessment and an on-site detention basin to adequately manage the proposed stormwater runoff from the development and mitigate any floodplain impacts. Langen's study provides supporting information showing there would be no adverse impact to the Cottonwood branch as a result of the proposed project. A letter of map revision, or LOMR, application will be required upon completion of work within the floodplain. So here on the map, or on the screen, you can see the tree preservation easement in green, the truck court area in the yellow, and the proposed detention basin on the top left. So as I mentioned, the property has an existing tree preservation easement, which will remain along the northern side, which is 80 feet deep, along the eastern side of the property, which is 50 feet deep. They will be preserving the majority of trees along the northern side, extending the 80-foot deep to the western property line. So you can see the additional green space there. They will also be preserving trees along the southern property line and anywhere else that's possible. Obviously, they will be cutting down trees for the truck court area and where the building and drive aisles will be. And they will be paying approximately $637,250 in tree mitigation fees. They will be proposing 98 trees on the site to be planted, and they've upgraded those from 3-inch to a 4-inch caliper. That will be planted not only in the parking islands, but around the building and perimeter, filling in any gaps of the existing tree area. So you can see that on the map. Shrubs will also be planted to fill in any gaps from the screening wall. So this is just a north to south section, kind of giving you sight lines of where the residential properties are in relation to where the proposed building is going to be. So the building is approximately 520 feet from the closest residence to the north, 80 feet of which just on this lot alone is preserved trees acting as screening. And as you can see the black line here is the property line. So you've got 80 feet of trees. You've probably got another 80 to 100 feet of additional trees within the residential area that also acts as screening. And all of this area is in the floodplain, so no wall or fence can be built on there. So you can see here, this is one of the buildings over here, and this is one of the buildings actually across the street. So you can see the sight line. So someone's standing out there. Basically, the trees are going to hide the building. And this is the same thing, but taken from the eastern side, where there's approximately 250 feet to the nearest residence to the east. And again, 50-foot tree preservation easement that is on site. And then you've got an additional tree stands on the residential portion. So again, blocking your line of sight from the house to the buildings. So while the property to the north and east are zoned for residential uses, the actual homes are pretty far away from the buildings with the tree preservation easements between them as well. And as I mentioned, there's a floodplain which does not allow for screening walls to be placed within it. There will be a retaining walls proposed along the majority of the northern portion of the truck court, which wraps around the eastern fire lane, and parking area, and then along the southern parking area. There will be two driveways on Freeport, with the drive aisle also acting as a fire lane as it circles the building. When we look at the elevations for this proposed building, it'll be a combination of tilt wall with vertical decorative battens. I'm going to butcher this word. Clerestory windows on the upper portion of the building and windows along the lower levels. The southeast and southwest corners of the building have an aluminum storefront with decorative form liner and spandrel glass that will be similar in appearance for most of the office buildings that you see. The office-styled architecture extends along the southern end in two additional sections. The windows along the southeast and southwest and southern sides have a metal canopy over them. The building is oriented east-west with the truck court oriented to the north to mitigate potential noise from the truck court area to the cemetery. The building is proposed to be 43 feet in the southern elevation and 39 feet and a half feet along the northern elevation. So a PD condition that is also being requested is to allow the building to be taller than 35 feet when within 150 feet of a property zone residential. So again, from the sight lines that we looked at, they won't even be able to see this building based on the density of the trees as well as the distance from where the houses are to where the building's located. And this is just the an image of the truck court area. So no signage was provided with the submittal. Any proposed signage will need to comply with city requirements. And here we're just getting some renderings of what the building will look like. So here you can see kind of the glass, the canopies, and the office-styled architecture. Again, this is a plan development being requested, so it is a zoning change. We did mail out notices, 20 within 200 feet, as required by state law, an additional 69 courtesy notices within 800 feet, and we received 4 responses and concerns. Essentially, they were looking at noise, traffic, wildlife disturbance, and I have the actual emails if you're interested in looking at them. Staff is recommending approval of this request subject to the following conditions. 1, to allow a living screen instead of the masonry screening wall. 2, to allow for the construction of a 43-foot tall building within 150 feet of residential properties. And 3, to request a variance to the city requirement for a conditional letter of map revision, or CLOMR. That is the end of my presentation. The applicant is here as well to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mary. A couple of quick refresher questions. So the current height, the proposed height is 40?
43.
And our ordinance is 35?
35. So it's 43 along the northern, or the kind of like the front of the building, and it kind of angles down to 39 and a half to the back.
Okay.
Did I get that right or wrong?
The other way.
The other way? Oh, sorry. Okay.
And the living screen rather than a masonry, what would happen if, just say, the trees died off, or they decided to take down some trees after they've developed the property?
Well, they're not allowed to take down the trees without getting a tree removal permit and paying for fees. And essentially, any trees that they take down, there's the 80-foot and the 50-foot tree preservation easement that has to stay.
Okay.
In addition, there's a large amount of trees. That 80-foot screening and 50-foot screening kind of are continued along that side. So I'm not sure why they would take it down.
Okay. Any questions of staff by the commission? Cindy had her hand up first.
Barely, barely, thank you. Just to follow up on the chairman's question about the tree preservation, I mean, who would know, just hypothetically, if some of the trees in the back, some of these newly planted trees died? How would the city enforce that they would put in a new tree?
Are you talking within the preservation easement?
No.
Okay.
The new trees?
Yes, the new trees that are going to be planted, what's to keep any developer, hypothetically, from just ignoring it and not watering them, and then they die, and then they're not replaced?
So, we do go and do a check when the building is constructed, before we allow them to, start operations in the building, to make sure that all the trees are there. Most of the trees have I believe, a 2-year warranty period on them, so that if they die, they are under warranty to be replaced. So yeah, if we notice that, we'll go and tell them, hey, the trees are missing and you need to plant them. And then Matt, I think, has some additional information.
Yeah, and then beyond that, we do expect for them to be maintained in a healthy and growing condition. It will become a code case if say, any of the trees die and they aren't replaced.
Thank you.
So all required landscaping has to be irrigated, so just to kind of answer your other question.
Yes, sir.
Mary, could I see the site plan, or do you have an aerial view of that site plan, please?
So I'm not sure, is there something particular you're looking at?
I want to see what's going on to the south of the site.
The cemetery.
The cemetery.
That's the cemetery.
Yeah.
Okay. So why is the active trucking part of this facility on the residential side instead of the cemetery side of this site?
Because
I mean, all the noise, all the noise, my point is, all the noise, trucking activity, everything is going to be happening on the residential side of the site. So I'm curious why the developer thought it was a great idea to put that activity on the residential side rather than on the cemetery side.
there's
Is there
about...
an access issue, or what's
No,
happening?
because it's about 500 feet before you reach a house versus...
Still, there's the noise.
But there's like 250 feet of trees.
I think it's a legitimate question.
You
True,
guys-
there's a buffer there, no doubt, but
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get it from the applicant there, Kent. Any other questions of staff by the commission? Freddie, any questions of staff?
I haven't. I don't have any. Thank you.
Okay. I see the applicant's ready to go, so we name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Sonny David. I'm with Langen Engineering. Address is 2999 Olympus Boulevard in Dallas, Texas, 75019. To answer the question or to discuss about that one point about the layout of the site, really what we were looking at is a couple of different things. Where the site's best laid out, when you start looking at it from a grading standpoint, just how you have docks a little bit lower. As you're approaching towards the Cottonwood Branch, the grades are lower, and so naturally it does make sense to have the layout as it's shown. The other thing that we were considering, though, is looking at an alternate where we flip the building to the other side. What happens is you basically, your higher portion of the building will then be facing the residence, and then you'll also be about 100 feet closer to that, and so it becomes more visible with where the building is in relation to their properties. And so really from trying to find a perspective that made the most sense from both sides, we thought flipping it in the location where we have shown allows the building to be a lower elevation, on the truck court side, and then again 100 or so feet back from where the residences are.
Thank you.
Sure.
Is there, can you share why the height needs to be increased?
It's the clear height from internally within the building. It's 32 feet clear, which is pretty standard and typical of the warehouse distribution for speculative warehouse. Also, one other point I just did want to mention is the 39 feet that we're talking about is really at the two end caps of the building. The northern edge of the building that's facing the residences are actually a little bit even lower. They're about 36 feet and 4 inches high. And so the vast majority of the building is really at that lower elevation, and then really the end caps are where it steps up to 39.
Okay. So you're proposing a shell. What kind of tenants do you anticipate having?
I'm Will Bowles with Alliance Industrial Company, representing the developer, 9900 North Central Expressway. This is what we would call a shallow bay building. Only it's 180 feet, not 190 feet deep. That tends more towards tenants that, well, first off, we expect this to be, this really sets up for 4 tenants, so a lot more office use than true distribution. But some this deep really tends to more neighborhood services or tenants that really require sort of the box truck type trucks versus a true 18-wheeler. That's really who we expect. People that operate between the hours of more of an 8 to 5 business versus a 24-hour, truck and come and go type of place.
So what kind of businesses?
I can give you a couple examples. Just south, we call this one Freeport 2 because we have a site on Freeport in the city of Irving at Freeport 635, which is a 2-building one. Building A is about this size, similar dimensions, is occupied by Terminex for, 3/4 of it. So, Terminex, green trucks. It's really sort of a pickup truck place, but they just have a lot of storage needs. Apparently they have a lot of Christmas tree decorations that they store there. The remainder of the building is occupied by Bar S Foods, which does the frozen hot dogs. And so they do a lot of freezer trucks. And then that's a similar size building. I think it's about almost the same dimensions as this one. Don't quote me on that, but it's very similar. Then building B at the Freeport 1 site is 260 feet deep, a little deeper bay, and that is a true 3PL, distribution type center. But that's the depth that they need to operate appropriately.
Could one tenant come in and buy the whole thing for distribution?
I wouldn't rule it out.
Fulfillment center?
I could not guarantee that won't happen, but from typical tenants, I would say no.
So most of your buildings this size are typically four different tenants?
This one, it's set up. We have it set up for about a 4-person, but it's usually a multi-tenant scenario.
Gotcha. You mentioned that the typical operation is an 8 to 4 kind of scenario?
But more of a typical working hours for a building of this size, yes.
In pre-session, we heard some of the concerns were noise and things from the trucks, reversing, beeping, and things like that. Could that, if some limitations were placed on operations, would that be a handicap to your site?
It would, from a leasing standpoint. I'd like to understand what
6 to 10
yes.
or something like that. Whatever, isn't that what we typically do on these kind of things?
6A to 10P. I mean,
but what
like
are
overnight?
Well, definitely no overnight. But
Yeah.
I mean, but if we were to, we've done some limitations on hours of operation on other. What?
Usually it's overnight operations.
Okay, I seem to recall. I thought we had a 6 to 10 or something. Oh, Kroger. Okay.
It was more the retail. So what
Okay.
they're asking is no deliveries at 1 o'clock in the morning
Sure.
to wake up the neighbors. That's
Yeah.
what we're talking. 18-wheelers coming in there at 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
I think that's your concern.
Yeah, it is. And you said it's like a smaller delivery type truck.
Typical for something
It's
like
not
this.
like an 18-wheeler, a typical 18.
It can accommodate an 18-wheeler, but typically that's not who leases a
Gotcha.
building of this size or these specs.
Okay. Questions of the applicant? Yes, sir.
What would be the impact to you if we wanted you to flip the building and put the, we'll call it the dormant side of the building towards the residences rather than the active side of the building?
I think the building would shrink, have a lot more grading impacts. I don't know if we'd be able to save as many trees.
I think you probably add some walls there as well.
Additional walls. I don't know what we're doing. I forget what we're doing with the drive on the south plant. Well, it is true south, southwest corner that's the 300. That's the existing drive, right?
Yeah.
It's an existing residential drive. The one on the north is the existing Alfred Media Drive as well.
And one of the other things that we're doing as part of this design is there's a large pipe that's relocating water that was coming in from the southern portion of the property around the building and then discharging out to the detention basin and then an outfall ultimately to the Cottonwood branch. It would be more difficult, I think, to capture the water and then bring it from the other way around if we had to do that as well. I think you'd have some real struggles, I think, with the earthwork trying to make it work out, and you'd probably have a larger either export or import rather than having a balanced site, which is what we typically try to do on these properties.
Bottom line is, it's doable, but it would be more expensive for you, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's hard to say all the challenges, but yeah, between walls, additional walls, shrinking the building, potentially having some issues relative to changing the patterns of the water and bringing it over to where we wanted it to be, and some earthwork issues. Yeah, I think that's just at the top of my head what I could think of, but there could be other challenges there as well.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry. Cindy, fire away.
Thank you. I'm always concerned about stormwater runoff, and I appreciate that you have this proposed retention basin here. But you do have an increase in impervious area. So I just wanted to confirm, does the stormwater on all the impervious areas drain towards the retention basin?
Yeah, correct. So the way that we're managing the increase of impervious is through the detention basin. It's attenuating the flow and slowly release it back so that the peak flow rates match the existing conditions.
Great, thank you.
Freddie, any comments or questions of the applicant?
See a follow-up question on the detention basin. I guess, since it's toward the front of the property, what are some of the safety concerns or things are you going to do different just to ensure that no one, obviously it's going to be dry most of the time, but, can you answer the question regarding the safety concerns and what you're doing regarding that?
Yeah, one of the things that we try to do when we tend to lay these out is have it some approximate distance away. Where there are sloped within the basin, they're 4-on-1, so they're reasonable from an erosion standpoint. You can kind of see where the entrance is. It is set further back away from there. Partially, some of the reasons why we showed the basin where it is right now is to protect and save more trees where we can in the spaces that they do have them available. From a safety standpoint, we do have the wall in the back. We will have some fencing there as well. If necessary, we could potentially add, like a 4-foot high fence on the western side if you thought that was, necessary as well. But it is an open basin otherwise.
Thank you.
Mary, you mentioned there were some comments that were brought in regarding the proposed application.
Yes, I can pass those down if you would like them.
Have we, let me be careful how I phrase this question, from the owners, not residents, but from the owners of the Rolling Oaks Memorial, have they provided any input on this?
So it's a...
Yeah, not dead people, but the operators of this,
it's a city cemetery.
I'm just looking, can we pull up an aerial image?
It's a city cemetery.
Yeah, I know it's a cemetery.
No, it's our cemetery.
Okay. Have we commented on that? We have, presume we have. Can we pull up an aerial image?
I also did want to add that, Alliance Industrial did meet with both HOAs on the north and to the east to discuss the project and the improvements as well.
Who was that?
Alliance, the developer,
Gotcha.
met with both
Gotcha.
HOAs in advance of this meeting.
So yeah, I know it's a kind of a cropped image there, but we have single family to the north, to the east, to the south. We have passive cemetery. We got recreation to the west, and I zoom out and I look at the Oak Lawn. Sorry, yeah. I look at the kind of the larger context of the area, and I know Michael's is on the other side, of whatever that street is, Ruby. But yes, the smaller, yeah.
Container
I look
store.
at that, I just feel like it's just too much. You're asking for a taller building. In the landscape plan, I didn't see, I get it on the east side, but on the south side, against the cemetery, I guess there were some trees along the parking there, but I just feel like the serenity of the ballpark, the passive recreation there, the hopeful serenity of the cemetery itself, and I get this is zone light industrial already. What was the special use permit?
So on the Alfred Media portion, there was previously a house there. So when they built the office warehouse, they wanted to keep the house, and it's their conference center and lodging house.
Okay. Are there any other questions of the applicant by the commission? Okay. We'll reserve the right to bring you back up for any follow-up questions. This is a public hearing, and I believe we have two people that maybe have signed up for it. This is the redevelop. Yeah, the redevelop. I'm sorry, one. Will Bowles? Oh, sorry. Yes, since it's a public hearing, is there anybody who'd like to speak for or against? Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner.
If I could get your name and address for the record.
Ram Sonkovalli, and my address is 618 Oak Grove. So we are east of this property. 1 second, I'm sorry. So I represent the HOA too, 9 Oaks HOA, all that property to the east.
Okay.
Well, I really liked how you questioned them, and some of the questions I was about to ask the same questions, and I got few answers from what you asked. But my greatest concern is, before when there was Alfred Media, we got some issues with noise. Whenever they were loading trucks, we could hear noises. So my house particularly is on the north side of that cul-de-sac to the east. So I am adjacent to that side property. So, they talked about different numbers, how many trucks, how many cars are going to be there, hours. Those are all my concerns. The other concern is I developed 9 Oaks. So Lomers, kind of no, but is there any excess water coming off this construction? Because any rainy event, we have a lot of water going through that creek, and we don't want more water added to the creek because already my property, which is like 0.74 acres, it gets flooded to the one side, so I don't want any more water added to that creek. So that's my greatest concern.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak for or against the proposed application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Discussion by the commission.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So reading through some of the comments, the the existing noise from the existing user came across in a few of the emails from the obviously the residents, and it's obviously quite a bit of a smaller building, although it does look like it has, you know, your standard 18-wheeler trucks. I mean, I guess the question is, from a noise standpoint, you know, how much of a, and this is a question for staff, like how much of a concern do we have based on this use to the surrounding households? They've indicated they can hear it, but from a decibel standpoint, from a dock door opening and closing, and what that generates to the distance, whether, you know, depending on what season it is, if there's leaves on the tree or not, do we have an idea of what that decibel drop-off would be?
So just a little clarification. It is zoned light industrial. The reason we're doing the PD is for the screening wall and the height. Otherwise, they can do this by right. So obviously, the screening wall is kind of impractical because there's the creek and the floodplain. And the height, you know, they want the extra heights because for industrial buildings, that's what they're looking for now, is a clear height because of the technology and everything that goes inside of those buildings. So your question about the noise, I don't have an answer to that. The only thing I can tell you is that, you know, it's like 500 feet to the houses to the north and probably a good 220 feet the houses to the east before it hits the building. And there's all that space in between is mostly trees.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. And now, the applicant, I asked about the kind of typical users. You said 8 to 4, but it could be a fulfillment center, right? There's nothing that says it couldn't.
No, we are not asking to limit it. Yeah, I couldn't say with 100% certainty that a distribution center wouldn't come single tenant occupy it, but from what we've heard from our, you know, tenant brokers that we've worked with, we have not really heard of someone occupying a building like this.
What is the typical sound of an operation like this? I mean, I'm just thinking 4 tenants, I don't know how active it is. Trucks backing up, the beeping all day long, throughout the day. I'm just asking.
Don't really have a good answer for that. I'm not typically around during the operation once it's leased up, you know.
It's not continuous, but it's enough that it's sporadic throughout the day for reversing and things like that. And
I'm sure, I'm trying to think, you know, I've been around when Bar S Foods has been coming around, but I'm sure they're, you know, at 7 o'clock loading up freezer trucks, taking it to, you know, wherever they're dropping off their frozen hot dogs. Or Terminex is loading up their pickup trucks with all their, you know, whatever pesticides or chemicals and all the Christmas tree lights.
Yeah, okay. While the applicant's up, any other questions of the applicant? Freddie, anything from you?
No questions.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. And Mary, final follow on. So they've met, with the exception of the screening wall and the height, they've met the requirements of the site at its maximum capacity? Is that like they could put no more footprint on this property?
This is what they're requesting. They've met all the requirements. So, you know, they've maintained the 80-foot tree preservation easement. They've extended that tree preservation easement along the north side. You know, they're planting another 100 trees onto the site. We've asked them to add kind of a little buffer, a little bit of height towards the cemetery section. They've pretty much done what we've requested or asked of them.
Can you pull up the site plan again?
Sure.
The one with the aerial.
This one?
There you go, there you go. Is this what we really have in mind? I mean, if we were to zoom out, right, we got ball fields, yeah, we got a cemetery, but the serenity of a cemetery, we got adjacent residential. I just feel this is too much. That's, look at the size of this building compared to what's there now, right? And the potential noise impact. We didn't even talk about lighting. I remember the property to the north, that was an issue when that came through, lighting and what that might look like at night and shielding and all that. I feel it's too much, just in the larger context of that area. And that's just my personal opinion on this one, but I don't feel I could support this, even though it meets. I'm sorry. I just feel it's just too much for this area. So that's my thought. Any thoughts by the commission before we entertain a motion?
Yes, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I see the point. I think to Mary's point, it is zoned light industrial.
Mm-hmm.
And, asking for, the two conditions. So if they didn't ask for these conditions, they would be able to build this as drawn.
As a 35-foot building.
Yeah. And I think from the standpoint of the homeowner side, seeing an existing, I think there's a difference when you see an existing structure when you're purchasing a home in an industrial area versus a vacant piece of land. And with a vacant piece of land that's zoned light industrial, it could be a small building or a large building. When you see an existing structure, I think it's a little bit of a different perspective. That being said, I mean, it is zoned light industrial, and there are, if you zoom out at the aerial, I know you can't do that. I'm zooming out on my iPad. I mean, there are other industrial centers that are pretty close to the housing, typically across a road, across a driveway or a throughway. And so, I mean, from that perspective, I certainly see the point, but I think from my perspective, it is the use is, although being potentially more obviously more intensive than what's there now, it meets the zoning.
Okay. Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So I don't have a problem with the use. I agree with the density question that you're having, Mr. Chairman. I do think it's just a little much, but I would support the project if it were flipped so that the noise to the residences is mitigated. And I guess that's my overall thought on it. I can't support it the way it's designed right now.
Any other comments or a motion?
Well, okay. I move to approve PD 318LI 300 Freeport Parkway redevelopment, Lot 1, Block A, a zoning change request from LI Light Industrial and S 1132 special use permit 1132 to PD 318 LI as set forth in item 8 of tonight's agenda.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Portman.
Subject to staff conditions.
Subject to staff conditions, I'm sorry. So we have a motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
I second.
Second, Commissioner Guerra. Cammie, would you call the roll?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Guerra.
Aye.
Vice Chair Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas.
Nay.
Commissioner Maurer.
Aye.
Commissioner Haithman.
Nay.
And Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
4 approved, 2 opposed. Motion carries.
Motion carries. Yeah, motion carries. Okay. Item 9 on the agenda is the accompanying redevelopment edition. This is a public hearing, 300 Freeport Parkway redevelopment edition, to consider approval of the redevelopment edition Lot 1 Block A replat, to plat the two properties into one lot, a portion being a replat of the Alford Media Edition consisting of 13.05 acres of land located south of Sandy Lake Road and on the east side of South Freeport Parkway, being developed by Alliance Industrial Company and being represented by Langen Engineering and Environmental Services. We have a staff presentation by Ms. Mary Braun Boswell. Mary?
So obviously, this is a companion item to the zoning case we just heard. Again, to combine the two pieces of property into one lot, totaling 13.05 acres. It'll establish fire lanes, easements for the construction of the new office warehouse building, and it'll show, what easements are being removed. So staff is recommending approval of the plat subject to the following conditions. One, that there may be additional comments at the time of engineering review and building permit, and two, that tree mitigation fees are paid at the time of tree removal permit. And that's the end of my presentation.
All right. Any questions of staff by the commission? Okay, seeing none. Is there anything the applicant would like to add to the proposed case? Seeing none. And you're in agreement with the conditions as presented? Nodding yes. Okay. This is a public hearing. If there's anybody who'd like to speak for or against, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any discussion by the commission? Is there a motion by the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have moved to approve item 9, 300 Freeport Parkway redevelopment plat edition, Lot 1, Block A replat, to plat the two properties into one lot, for item 9 in our agenda.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry. We have a second by Commissioner Marr. I'm sorry. Cammie, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Guerra?
Aye.
Vice Chair Portman?
Aye.
Chairman Haas?
Because we're platting two lots into one lot, I'm not opposed to that. So I'll vote aye on that.
Commissioner Maurer?
Aye.
Commissioner Haveman?
Aye.
Commissioner Bishop?
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. All righty, item 10 this evening. 10 through 13, these are ordinance text amendments. I will read them all in. Okay, item 10, this is off-street loading space, an ordinance text amendment to consider approval of text changes to our Code of Ordinance, Chapter 12, Article 31-3, off-street loading space for all districts, adding, quote, existing loading dock areas of warehouse/distribution sites within the light industrial district may be converted to additional off-street parking spaces, provided the area is screened from public view or adjacent property with evergreen landscaping in accordance with Section 12-34-7, the general standards, or with a masonry screening wall in accordance with Section 12-33 screening standards. Item 11 is parking requirements based on land use. The ordinance text amendment to consider an amendment to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 12, Article 31-6, that being the parking requirements based on use, amending the off-street parking requirements for manufacturing or industrial establishment, research or testing laboratory, creamery, bottling plant, warehouse, printing or plumbing shop, or similar establishment, to replace term warehouse with warehouse/distribution, and revise the parking requirement from one space per each employee on the maximum working shift, plus space to accommodate all trucks and other vehicles used in connection therewith, but not less than one parking space for each 1,000 square feet of floor area, changing that to one parking space for each employee on the maximum working shift, working shift plus space to accommodate all trucks and other vehicles used in connection therewith, but not less than one space for each 2,000 square feet of floor area. Item 12 is rules for computing the number of parking spaces. To consider text change amendments to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 12, Article 31-7, that being the rules for computing the number of parking spaces. Adding quote number 6, the Director of Community Development is authorized to grant a 5% reduction in parking for retail centers greater than 10,000 square feet in building area. Item 7, the Director of Community Development is authorized to approve a reduction of the number of required parking spaces by more than 5% reduction in the number of required spaces for retail centers greater than 10,000 square feet in building area. And if such reduction is supported by findings of a parking study or alternate parking plan but obtained by the owner or developer of the property that is prepared by a licensed transportation engineer. Item 13, provisions for business zoning districts. To consider text change amendments to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 12, Article 12-29-4, that being provisions for business zoning districts, to allow signs, excluding pole signs, built prior to 1990 to be rebuilt in the same location with the same height and width, provided they are architecturally compatible with the main structure on site. We have a staff presentation by Mr. Matt Steer. Matt?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good evening. So the purpose of these amendments to the zoning ordinance are to incorporate items discussed during the Industrial 2.0 and retail roundtables that the city performed in fiscal year 23. These will allow for more flexibility in parking requirements for industrial and retail users, and the modification to the city's requirements related to non-conforming monument signage could potentially improve the aesthetics of outdated signage along major corridors. These changes are city initiated, and we briefed the council on these concepts in September, and we're given the consent to bring these items forward. If recommended for approval, they will go to the City Council for a public hearing and adoption on November 12th. The first is to allow for conversion of the dock areas to vehicular parking within an existing office warehouse site, provided the area is screened from view. Currently, a conversion of dock areas to car parking would necessitate a minor site plan amendment and would need the approval from the Director of Community Development. With this amendment, the change would be allowed by right and could be done at the time of building permit. The amendment would allow more flexibility for reconfiguration of the site to accommodate more vehicles, for a change in tenant or operations of an existing tenant, and the space could easily be converted back if that user changes. And just to be clear, this is not a drop-off or pickup area for children, but rather it's an area in our light industrial district used for the shipping of goods within a warehouse or distribution site. So here's an existing example. We have, this is Lot 2, Building 3 of the warehouse that was constructed at the southwest corner of Beltline and Southwestern. And if they wanted to come in and convert that area to car parks, they would have to effectively screen that from the view of the adjacent properties in the public road. So there's the addition of the parking spaces for the change in user, the need for the parking spaces, and there's the additional evergreen screening. The second of the text amendments is a minor text amendment to the zoning ordinance to address current requirement for warehouse or distribution centers. The proposed changes decrease the minimum parking required from 1 parking space per 1,000 square feet to 1 parking space per 2,000 square feet, while ensuring the number of employees on the maximum working shift each have a parking space. Although the comparison city research showed a range of required parking from 1 parking space per 1,000 square feet to one parking space per 2,000 square feet, and from 1 parking space per 1 employee to 1 parking space per 4 employees, staff feels comfortable in recommending the adjustment to our minimum standard based on our discussions with the industrial operators. This text amendment will also have a cleanup item to use the same term, warehouse distribution, as defined in the special definitions section of the zoning ordinance. And what staff has observed over time is that the larger the warehouse, the emptier the parking areas. The third text amendment was a result of the retail roundtable held with retail developers to discuss the future trends in retail. And during the roundtable, the parking requirements for retail centers was brought up. Parking requirements of the zoning ordinance are based on extreme cases. During peak times, and often there's a large amount of parking that's never utilized except for during the holidays. The Director of Community Development is proposed to be authorized to grant a 5% reduction in the parking for retail centers that are greater than 10,000 square feet in size, or in 10,000 square feet in building area, and anything greater than 5% would need a parking study and alternate parking plan prepared by a licensed transportation engineer. And during work session, it was mentioned that a limit of 10% be placed on the potential for administrative approval. If this is desired by the majority of the commission, then state that as a condition within your recommendation. With this, there's going to be greater flexibility in administering the parking requirements, and it allows for more businesses to fill the retail centers. And the reason for the 10,000 square foot threshold is related to the number of tenants involved. Anything under 10,000 square feet would have fewer tenants and less parking wiggle room, so to speak. The next text amendment relates to non-conforming signs. So during the retail roundtable, it was a consensus that the handful of non-conforming signs or freestanding signs are most likely never going to be removed and brought into compliance unless destroyed by natural disaster. And because these signs were built prior to the current ordinance, they're typically larger in size and greater in height than what the current ordinance permits, and are considered legal non-conforming. If they could be rebuilt to the same height and same width that they are currently, then the owners of the centers would consider rebuilding these signs to be more architecturally compatible with the centers and would be more uniform with the existing signage along the city roads. So staff's recommending the following verbiage be introduced into the non-conforming signage section. If the freestanding sign was built prior to 1990, and if the sign is not considered a pole sign, then the sign can be rebuilt in the same location with the same height and width, provided it's architecturally compatible with the main structure on site. Again, the purpose of these amendments to the zoning ordinance are to incorporate concepts discussed during the Industrial 2.0 roundtable and the retail roundtable that the city performed in fiscal year 23. These will allow for more flexibility in parking requirements for both industrial and retail users, and the modifications of the city requirements related to the non-conforming monument signage could potentially improve the aesthetics of the outdated signage along our major corridors. So staff's recommending approval of the text amendments following a public hearing, and if recommended for approval, these will be brought forward to the City Council on November 12th for another public hearing, and a newspaper notice will be published at least 15 days in advance of the council meeting. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Matt. Any questions of staff by the commission?
Yes.
Go ahead. Ed?
So Matt, in terms of the first amendment, the text change, in terms of the screening, so with the current use, let's say the dock doors, there's no screening requirement today?
There is a screening requirement of wing walls. If you look at this proposal, there's some wing walls here to screen the dock doors from view.
Okay, but it increases with the parking?
Correct, yes. So you'll have the vehicular parking, and then that would increase the intensity of that area with more cars. So we feel that either a wall screening the area or evergreen screening.
Okay.
Also, there's a section in our ordinance that says that you're not required to have landscape islands at the end of your parking rows if, say, it's completely screened from public view. So this would help with that requirement.
Okay. And then is this a all or none? So let's say a portion of the building wanted to convert to the additional parking, and then another portion of the building would not?
No, it's not an all or none.
Okay.
No, I anticipate that there's several warehouses that, have multiple tenants, that only one tenant wants to do that.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody who'd like to speak for or against the proposed application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Discussion by the commission. Did you discuss the?
That's on the next one. 10%.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're doing one at a time.
No, we can do them all.
We're doing them all
at
right
the
now.
same time. Mr. Chairman, what I've written is, if you go to number 12, and it says, number of required parking spaces by more than 5%, not to exceed 10%, semicolon. However, any increase over 5% then would require the study. Is
that was that's
that was your discussion?
Akin to the discussion in work.
And I've got that wording, and if you want a motion to approve 10, 11, 12 as amended by city attorney, and 13, I've got those notes. I'll give them to the city,
okay.
In this case, the P&Z secretary.
Any discussion by the commission on that? Okay, so then I'll make a motion to approve the text amendments as proposed with the amendments written by the city attorney and delivered to city staff on item 12. Motion by Commissioner Haas. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Portman. Cammie, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Guerra?
We didn't hear you there, Freddie.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, aye.
Thank you. Vice Chair Portman?
Aye.
Chairman Haas?
Aye.
Commissioner Mauer?
Aye.
Commissioner Haveman?
Aye.
And Commissioner Bishop?
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Okay, very good. Item 14 on the agenda is update on council actions. Matt?
I don't believe there were any P&Z items on the council.
Okay.
No update.
Very good. Then item 15 is adjournment. The time is 8:57, and I will adjourn this meeting.